Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of the most unnerving stories to come out of World War II. You find yourself standing on a sweltering island in the Philippines, and the air is so thick with humidity, it's like breathing through a wet blanket. Palm trees creak above your helmet. Soldiers around you joke and grumble in equal measure. But behind all of it, underneath the dusty boots and cracked canteens, there's something else in the air. Something you can't quite name yet? It's confidence, pride even, and it's leaking out of the towering figure at the center of it all. General Douglas MacArthur. He strides like a war god through the carved rock corridors of Manila's command center chest, out sunglasses on corncob pipe, clenched just so. He's not just in charge here, he is the plan. You're part of the early waves of American and Filipino forces stationed in the Pacific, right? As tensions with Japan are turning from whispers into roars. The brass assures you this place, this whole damn region, is a fortress. Impenetrable. And MacArthur. He's the architect, the voice on the radio, the man with the plan. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and what time you're listening in. The comments, I always love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge behind a supply truck heading toward Bataan, the jungle blurring into streaks of dark green as the wheels carve dust through cracked roads. You're already sweating through your shirt. The sun here doesn't tap your skin, it presses. And in the back of your mind, you can't shake the feeling that everything around you is being held together with string and prayers. General MacArthur, however, doesn't seem to share your concerns. He set up his headquarters in a luxurious suite in Manila's Manila Hotel, complete with polished floors and fresh flowers. It's not exactly the vibe of a man expecting combat. There's even a piano. You overhear a lieutenant whisper to another, "He's planning a concert, not a campaign." They laugh. You don't, because you've seen the maps. Or more accurately, the map. One oversized, outdated wall map, so generalized it might as well be a children's board game. And that's the one MacArthur points to in every strategy meeting, finger jabbing at cities and islands like they're props in a stage play. The quirk here: this entire area stretching from Luzon to Mindoro is still operating under War Plan Orange, a defense strategy written in the 1920s. It assumes a few key things: the U.S. Navy will come charging in to relieve you, and the Filipino Army will be combat ready. Neither of those things are even remotely true. But MacArthur, ever the romantic, treats the plan like gospel. Historians still argue whether MacArthur sincerely believed the Navy could reach him in time, or if he simply needed others to believe it. Maybe both, maybe neither. You hear rumors filtering through the ranks. 1 Japanese ships have been sighted off Lingayen Gulf. 2 Japanese paratroopers are already on Luzon. 3, the Air Corps isn't answering radio checks. It feels like a horror movie where you know the killer's inside the house, but everyone keeps insisting it's just the wind. A soldier named Davis hands you a dented canteen and mutters, "Man, we're gonna get blindsided." You can feel it. It's like static. You nod. You do feel it. But try getting anyone at HQ to admit it. At this point, the irony's starting to build like pressure behind your eyes. See, MacArthur is idolized. In America, he's a war hero. The press love him. Politicians trust him. He's got the swagger of Patton without the tanks. So when he insists Japan will be held at bay, will be pushed back, even you almost believe him. Almost. But the numbers don't lie. The men are undertrained. The terrain's unforgiving. The supply lines are barely functional. And worst of all, the Japanese are faster, smarter, and more ruthless than anyone at HQ seems ready to admit. Then there's this gem of a detail: MacArthur refuses to dig in defenses around Manila early on because he believes it would send the wrong message to the Filipino people. He wants to preserve morale. You're standing in jungle mud wondering if maybe preserving lives should rank higher. Oh, and here's a fringe tidbit to stew on. MacArthur was reportedly convinced his personal charisma would intimidate Japanese leadership. As in, they'd think twice about striking hard, just knowing he was there. Let that simmer. You help unload crates of tinned rations in a humid depot near the Bataan Peninsula. The boxes are mislabeled. Half the meat's already spoiled. This is what you'll be surviving on if it comes to that. When it comes to that. No one says it out loud, but you and the others know what's coming. You don't talk about victory. You talk about how long you can hold out. Days, weeks, months if you're lucky. By nightfall, the island seems to tense around you. Every palm leaf's rustle sounds like movement. Every distant light could be a signal. Your rifle rests across your lap, but you're not sure how much it'll matter when the time comes. And as you lie back against a patch of warm stone, staring up at a moon, you barely recognize. You wonder how someone with so many medals could be this blind. How a general with every resource at his fingertips could lead you right into a meat grinder with his eyes wide open. You wake up to the sound of shovels, not gunfire, not alarms, just the slow, rhythmic chink of men digging. It's strangely soothing until you realize they're not digging fortifications, they're clearing space for supply crates. Apparently, the brass still thinks Manila is the safest place on the island. They're storing munitions next to theaters' rice, next to radio stations, and pretending the city's status as an open city will somehow make the Japanese politely avoid it, like a no-fly zone over Disneyland. You're shuffled onto a convoy heading toward Corregidor. It's a rocky little island at the mouth of Manila Bay, sometimes called the Rock, and you're told this is the last line of defense. Impregnable, they say. They'll never take this place. You arrive just before sunset. The entire island is shaped like a tadpole, long tail, wide head, and almost entirely fortified. The Malinta Tunnel complex is the heart of it, a maze of underground chambers, blasted straight into the island's guts. Command posts, hospitals, ammunition depots. There's even an area where officers sleep in bunks and pretend it smells normal. You walk through that concrete womb, running your hand along damp walls. A posted sign reads, "No spitting." Another says, "Silence, swia, safety." Both feel like polite reminders in a space that was designed to host the end of the world. Inside the tunnel, you feel oddly safe until you realize why. It's too comfortable, too well lit, too bureaucratically clean. There are desks with phones, wall calendars, and even flowers in glass bottles. It's like someone took a Midwestern insurance office and just buried it under 100 feet of volcanic rock. MacArthur calls this place his fortress of freedom. You don't get to see him in person, he's moved back to the mainland, but his command flows through here like a voice from the clouds. He rarely visits the front anymore. Orders arrive by courier, sometimes by pigeon. Seriously, pigeon. Historians still argue whether he distanced himself from Corregidor's garrison to maintain the illusion of strategic control or simply to avoid being trapped himself. Meanwhile, you and the others are told to dig in. Problem is, everything's already dug. There are no more trenches to make, no fallback points to create. You're just waiting now in this polished crypt for something to break through. Oh, and let's talk about those supplies. They're running out. Food rations are already being halved. Water is strictly rationed, less than 1 canteen a day per man. You see a guy trade 2 cigarettes for half a mango. Another one hoards aspirin like it's currency. Word gets around that one major is charging troops a fee for extra socks. The quirk. There's a literal vault room packed with fine wine. Real French stuff. You're not allowed in, of course. That's for the brass. But the irony isn't lost. You spend your nights listening to the jungle breathe outside. The tunnel amplifies every sound. Coughs echo down corridors like distant gunshots. Someone hums a Glenn Miller tune and gets hissed at. You lie there with your boots still on, unsure whether to relax or brace. Outside in the open air, guards rotate on 2-hour shifts. Visibility's garbage mist rolls in like spilled milk every morning, and the Japanese scout planes buzz the skies overhead like lazy bees. They're watching, measuring, and still the command insists everything's under control. During one early morning briefing, a colonel gives a rousing speech about holding the line, pacing in front of a blackboard, while pointing at arrows and numbers. None of it makes sense. One of the arrows actually points backward. He doesn't notice. You do. You find yourself asking questions you never expected to care about, like, what's the actual plan if the Japanese land here? What's the radio range from Corregidor to Cavite? Is that water filter still working? Why is no one talking about the airfields anymore? That last one sticks with you, the airfields. Because the Japanese are taking them, one by one. They've seized Clark Field, then Nichols. You're losing air support inch by inch, and no one seems to be adjusting for it. You pass two lieutenants whispering in a side corridor. One says if MacArthur doesn't move us soon, they'll bury us here. The other just nods, folding a note into his breast pocket like a last confession. Morale is fine. Not good, not terrible. Mostly just numb. Everyone here has heard about the invincibility of the American war machine, about how reinforcements are coming. You just need to hold. But hold for what? You pass a chaplain who's polishing his shoes. He doesn't say anything. Just shines them like it matters. Like he'll be walking out of here someday, stepping into sunlight and praise. Here's a mainstream fact you might appreciate. Corregidor was considered one of the most heavily fortified islands in the world before the war. It had 16 coastal batteries, massive anti-aircraft guns, and deep defensive tunnels. On paper, it was a nightmare to invade. But paper lies. You find a cracked pipe leaking near the barracks, and no one's come to fix it in days. The radio's cut out regularly, and someone keeps leaving half-eaten rations in the latrines. Little things, sure, but they add up. They always do. You get your first letter from home. It's been weeks. The envelope's warped water-stained, but the handwriting makes your chest ache. Your sister's worried. She says the newspapers are saying MacArthur's boys are digging in strong. She says, I hope they give you something for Christmas. You fold the letter and tuck it in your shirt. It feels like it belongs closer to your heart than your pocket. That night, someone makes a joke about how if they had a nickel for every mosquito bite, they could bribe their way back to California. Everyone laughs a little too hard. The air smells like rust mildew and something else like wet gunpowder. As the lights flicker and the concrete walls sweat beside you, you start to wonder if this fortress was ever real at all, or if it was always just a story you were told so you'd stay put long enough to become part of it. You're jolted awake by a low, distant thump. Not loud, not close, but it's wrong. You sit up fast hand instinctively, gripping your helmet like it's some kind of shield against the unknown. The others around you blink in confusion, half asleep, half dreaming. Then comes another. Louder this time. Closer. The sound rolls through the tunnel like a dropped boulder. You lock eyes with a corporal across the corridor. He mouths it before the officers do. They've started. It's December 29th, 1941, and Manila is on fire. You stumble out of the tunnel to a sky painted orange, not by sunrise, but by flames licking across the city skyline. Bombs are falling. Not one or two, but waves. Japanese aircraft swarm above like mechanical vultures. You watch explosions ripple through downtown as fuel depots, government buildings, and whole city blocks vanish in plumes of black smoke. Remember how MacArthur refused to fortify Manila? Said it would send the wrong message. Well, the message the Japanese are sending is, we don't care about your city's feelings. Officially, MacArthur had declared Manila an open city just hours earlier. That means it's supposed to be spared from bombing since it's been demilitarized and evacuated. But here's the kicker, it wasn't. The order came too late. Troops and munitions are still there. Radios still hum. trucks still idle, and the Japanese aren't feeling particularly generous. They drop bombs anyway. Dozens die in the first hour, then hundreds, then maybe more. Historians still argue whether Tokyo ignored the Open City Declaration out of malice or simple disbelief that MacArthur had the audacity to keep troops stationed there. You're told to prepare for evac back to Bataan. The plan, if you can call it that, is to pull remaining forces out of Manila and regroup for a final stand on the peninsula. You load into trucks packed so tight you can taste the sweat of the guy next to you. Every bump jostles a knee or elbow. Someone sneezes and nobody says anything. No one dares to ask what the next stop is. On the roadside, civilians wave white flags. Bed sheets, pillowcases, anything to signal don't shoot were harmless. You see a child holding a teddy bear wrapped in newspaper. Her other hand grips her mother's wrist like it's all that's anchoring her to earth. A dog chases the convoy for 3 blocks, tail wagging, tongue out, as if this is all some long, weird parade. You don't know whether to laugh or cry. Back on Corregidor, MacArthur has retreated underground, not just physically, but mentally. The once daily strategy briefings dwindle into silence. Orders become cryptic. Communications drop. And yet, strangely, his public image is thriving. You find a newsletter printed God knows where with a bold headline, MacArthur vows to hold Philippines. His face grins from beneath that iconic hat. You feel like punching in. There's a strange moment where you find yourself wondering if he dies here, will they make him a martyr? Or if he lives, will they make him a myth? Let's talk logistics now, briefly. Over 80,000 troops are retreating to Bataan, plus another 20,000 civilian refugees. That's 100,000 people suddenly dumped onto a narrow peninsula with almost no food, minimal medical supplies, and zero infrastructure prepared for a siege. And the cherry on top, most of the rations are still in Manila. A fringe tidbit you overhear from a signalman MacArthur had known for weeks that war was imminent and still refused to move critical supplies to Bataan ahead of time because, get this, he didn't want to alarm the public. So now it's not just the enemy you're fighting, it's hunger. You pull a half-rotten biscuit from your ration pack and chew it like it's filet mignon. The guy next to you eats a raw onion, not even a full one, just slices. You arrive at Bataan's southern tip by nightfall. The jungle here is thicker than ever. Trees loom like silent sentries. Insects never shut up. It feels like nature's closing in, reclaiming its land one vine at a time. You're assigned to dig foxholes near a line of rusted trucks turned into impromptu barricades. One still has a birthday card pinned to the dashboard. It says, "You're the best dad." Yeah, real heartwarmer. You ask a lieutenant what the strategy is. He shrugs and says, "Hold as long as you can. MacArthur's got a plan." You suppress a laugh. It comes out like a cough. The nights in Bataan are different. It's not just darkness, it's absolute. Stars vanish behind clouds, and even the moon seems reluctant to shine. You sleep in bursts. Your dreams are scrambled, half jungle, half explosion, half your childhood bedroom in Iowa. And in the morning, you're shelled. Japanese artillery has found your range. They start probing the lines like a predator testing prey. Not full assaults yet, just jabs. But you know what jabs lead to. You help drag a wounded man back to cover. He's missing 2 fingers and keeps asking if you've seen his wedding ring. You haven't. You lie and say yes. You say you'll find it. That's when it hits you. The American military just lost its first real battle of the war, and it hasn't even been properly fought yet. One more thing, there's this odd morale poster some genius decided to distribute across the peninsula. It reads, "Every man a hero, every foxhole a fortress." Someone scrawled under it in charcoal, "Every hour a funeral." You can smell it before you see it, the rot of the jungle blending with gunpowder and sweat. The heat is relentless. It clings to your skin like cellophane, slick and suffocating. The jungle, once just background noise, is now your entire world. Welcome to the front lines of Bataan. Here's the setup. Two defensive lines stretch across the peninsula. The Abuke line in the north and the Orion Bagak line farther back. You're posted on the Abuke line. The thinking is that the terrain will slow the Japanese advance. Steep hills, thick foliage swamps filled with mosquito armies, it's nature's barbed wire. But nature doesn't take sides. It just kills indiscriminately. You're handed a shovel and told to dig deep and dig fast. There's no plan B. The machine guns are old, some of the mortars misfire, and you're sharing grenades like they're Halloween candy. One guy gets a single bullet for his Springfield rifle and jokes, "Better make it count." The official line from HQ is still optimistic. MacArthur sends a radio message from Corregidor Baton can hold indefinitely. But he doesn't mention the fact that most of the soldiers here haven't eaten a real meal in days, or that the medical tents are overflowing with malaria cases. You've seen more men pass out from fever than from shrapnel. Remember that luxury wine vault on Corregidor? Meanwhile, here on the front, you're drinking boiled swamp water through a sock. That first week, the Japanese test the perimeter, launching small-scale assaults mostly at night. You barely sleep. When you do, it's with one eye open and your rifle across your chest. The cries in the darkness, real or imagined, keep you tense. There's always the sound of something moving in the brush, and you never know if it walks on two legs or four. You share a foxhole with a kid from Oklahoma who brought his harmonica to war. He plays softly when things go quiet sometimes. A lullaby, sometimes just long, ghostly notes that fade into the tree line. You don't have the heart to tell him it's probably giving away your position. Historians still debate whether the U.S. High Command truly believed Bataan could hold, or if they just needed a narrative that bought them time back home. Either way, you're the pawn holding that lie together with duct tape and prayer. Here's your mainstream historical fact. For the day, the Battle of Bataan was the largest surrender in American military history. But that doesn't happen yet. Right now, you're still being told you're delaying the enemy. You'll hear that phrase a lot. Delaying action, strategic resistance, heroic defense. They never call it what it really is, stalling with bodies. You see your first real firefight on January 9th. The Japanese launch a full assault tanks leading the charge. Your unit holds for 6 hours. The jungle catches fire. Trees collapse screaming like banshees. The guy in the hole next to you gets hit in the throat and makes no sound at all, just a gentle bubbling like a broken faucet. There's a moment in the chaos where everything slows down. You watch a Japanese soldier run straight through a patch of flames without flinching. He dives behind a boulder and starts setting up a mortar. You aim, but your rifle jams. By the time you clear it, he's gone. You lie there after the fighting, half covered in dirt and ash, thinking not about death or duty, but about your mom's kitchen. There was a bread tin with a dent in the lid. You'd give anything to open that bread tin right now, even if it just had raisins in it. A fringe detail: a few desperate soldiers are hunting monkeys. Not for sport, for food. One sergeant starts collecting beetles. Crunchy but high in protein, he says, grinning like a lunatic. You hear rumors of someone roasting a dog. You hope it's just talk. You really do. When a supply drop finally arrives, it's a mess. The parachutes drift miles off target. One crate lands in a river. Another slams into a tree and explodes. You manage to salvage a tin of powdered eggs and a single chocolate bar. You split the chocolate 5 ways. It tastes like heaven. You can't remember the last time you tasted sugar. There's a new twist now. Some of the enemy soldiers are Filipinos. Collaborators, they're called. They know the terrain, speak the dialects, and walk like locals. It messes with your head. You hesitate before every encounter, wondering who's really on your side. The command keeps promising air support, but the skies remain silent. One plane flies over and drops a single leaflet. Help is coming, that's it. Not food, not ammo, just hope printed in cursive. You start to lose time. Days blend together in a blur of sweat, mud, and adrenaline. You stop writing in your journal. Too tired. Too scared of what you might write. The only thing keeping your brain tethered is repetition load. Aim, fire, reload, breathe. Someone tells you the Japanese commander is a guy named Hama. You picture a face, but you know it's probably wrong. You imagine him sipping tea in a silk robe, circling your position on a map with a red pencil. He's not just beating you, he's starving you first. And yet somehow you hold. One night, a captain stands atop a mound and gives a speech about making history. Halfway through, a shell lands 30 feet away and blows the man in half. No one finishes the speech. No one ever mentions it again. The trees around you are now splintered matchsticks. The ground smells like iron. You've lost 3 of your original squad. You don't ask about replacements anymore. You find a can of peaches in an abandoned field kitchen. It's rusted, dented, but sealed. You don't even eat it right away. You just hold it in your hands for 10 minutes like it's some holy relic. When you finally eat it, you don't chew. You let it dissolve on your tongue. You don't even swallow until the juice warms in your mouth. It's the best thing you've ever tasted. Your boots are mush. The soles have come unglued, the laces fray, and every step feels like you're squishing through a wet newspaper. Still, you keep walking because no one's come to relieve you and the war doesn't care that your toes are bleeding. You've been rotated to the Orion Bagak line now. Remember that earlier line you defended, the Abakai one? Yeah, that one collapsed. It wasn't your fault. But that doesn't stop the shame from creeping in at 3 a.m., whispering that maybe if you'd shot straighter, dug deeper, yelled louder. Bagas is different. Denser. You can't see 10 feet ahead without peering through leaves, vines, and spider webs. And now it's raining. Not just drizzling, it's torrential. Tropical rain turns the jungle into a soup of mud and mosquito larvae. You try to keep your rifle dry, tucking it under your poncho like it's a baby. You know if the firing pin gets clogged, it's over. You also know the Japanese don't stop for weather. Which brings us to January 22nd of 1942. A day that historians still argue about not just for its significance, but for its utter absurdity. This is the day the Japanese decide, hey, why not land more troops on the western coast of Bataan, as if the thousands already on your tail weren't enough. They call it the Battle of the Points, and you lucky you were on patrol when the boats come. It starts with whispers. A lookout says he spotted something near the beach. Then another swears he saw lights offshore. A third reports hearing something metallic. No alarms go off. You're told to investigate. You approach the western coastline, cautiously weapon-drawn, nerves taut. Then you see them small Japanese landing craft sneaking in through the rocks like beetles under a floorboard. You open fire. So do your buddies. The Japanese scatter into the jungle, some still wearing their life vests. And somehow in the pitch-black night, they disappear, like ghosts. That's the horrifying part. They don't try to break the line. They infiltrate behind it. Suddenly, the enemy isn't just in front of you. They're everywhere. Behind trees, under logs, buried in foxholes you thought were yours. You spend the next 3 days fighting in a loop. Forward, back, advance, retreat. You never really gain or lose ground, you just bleed on it. At one point, you're told to defend Point C, but nobody can find Point C on the map. The coordinates are wrong. You pass the same blasted-out palm tree 3 times in an hour and start to wonder if you're going in circles or just losing your mind. Here's a quirky tidbit. A group of Filipino scouts discovers a Japanese sniper hiding inside the hollow of a tree. Inside it. They torch the tree and out he pops like some horrific jack-in-the-box. Food is officially gone. No more rations. No more emergency tins. You boil tree bark now. One guy swears banana leaves give you energy. Another tries eating charcoal. The medics don't even argue anymore. They're too tired. Disease joins the party. Dengue, dysentery, and good old malaria. The guy next to you is hallucinating. He's back in Cincinnati selling hot dogs at a Reds game. You just nod along because honestly, that sounds amazing right now. Meanwhile, MacArthur is still on Corregidor, his headquarters dug into the rock. He's broadcasting patriotic slogans like a broken jukebox. We shall fight to the end, and the eyes of the world are upon you. You trade every word of that for one can of beans. Historians still debate why MacArthur insisted on staying in the Philippines so long. Some say he believed it would inspire the troops. Others argue it was pure ego. A few claim Washington was pressuring him to hold out at all costs for political optics. Whatever the reason, you're the one paying the interest. Back to the points. The Japanese dug in hard. Every time you think they're wiped out, another group pops up. At night, you can hear them whispering in the trees. Not shouting, whispering, like they know you're listening. Your unit finally gets the upper hand after a week. It involves flamethrowers, bayonets, and good old-fashioned desperation. One lieutenant uses a bulldozer, a literal bulldozer, to push a clutch of enemy snipers off a cliff. Nobody even blinks. That's how weird this war has gotten. And just as things start to settle, you get rotated again to the pockets. That's what they're calling the new enemy positions on the East Coast. Similar to the points, but inland. Japanese forces got trapped in isolated clearings during another botched landing. You're told to mop them up. You laugh, you can't help it. You haven't mopped anything since basic. The pockets fight is worse than the points. Why? Because by now, everyone's gone feral. You've been wearing the same socks for 2 weeks. Your fingernails are black with grime. You can't remember what color your skin used to be. There's a moment, an absurd moment, where you find yourself in a hand-dug trench, swinging a helmet like a club. Not firing, not throwing grenades, just whacking an enemy soldier with your helmet, like it's the Middle Ages. Eventually, after 11 days of madness, the pockets are cleared. But the cost is grotesque. Bodies everywhere. You step over so many that you stop noticing the smell. And here's the kicker. The victory doesn't feel like a win. It just feels like a pause button. A brief lull where the bullets aren't flying, but the jungle still hums. And you still itch from bites and your stomach still growls like a cornered dog. Someone brings news Roosevelt wants MacArthur to leave. Like evacuate. You blink. Leave now. When morale is hanging by a thread, and half your friends are buried under jungle moss. The rumor is MacArthur initially refuses. He says, I'll never abandon my men. The next day he agrees. The word filters down like mist, slow, inevitable, and cold on the back of your neck. MacArthur is leaving. The man who promised I shall return hasn't even left yet, but somehow that catchphrase is already circling like a ghost with a punchline. You're lying on a bamboo mat in a clearing that still smells like cordite and blood, and you hear the news from a guy who heard it from a guy. He's hopping on a boat tonight, someone says. Or a submarine. Another adds, no, a plane. Secret airfield. No one knows for sure, but the message is clear he's going. And you're not. MacArthur's departure happens under cover of darkness on March 11th, 1942. He, his family, and a small staff slip out of Corregidor aboard 4 PT boats racing across the South China Sea to Mindanao before catching a flight to Australia. You don't see it, of course. You're too busy boiling vines into soup and checking for leeches in your socks, but you feel it. Like the air just got thinner. Historians still argue whether MacArthur's escape was a strategic necessity or a political show. Roosevelt had ordered it publicly to save a general privately to protect a symbol. The Philippines were doomed and Washington knew it. But America needed a hero, and dead heroes can't give press conferences. Still, when the word officially comes down, morale doesn't crash. It snaps. Like a dry twig. You watch the chaplain walk out of the tent and punch a tree so hard he breaks his knuckles. You don't get a chaplain replacement. The jungle closes in tighter every day. The food situation is past tragic, it's now comic. Someone finds a crate of hardtack that expired in World War I. You laugh until you bite into it and chip a molder. One of the cooks manages to catch a monitor lizard. It's 6 feet long and built like a dinosaur. Tastes like greasy chicken. You eat it anyway. You're living on boiled weeds, rice husks, and something labeled meat substance that smells like a shoe. You lose weight so fast your belt loops cry, uncle. Oh, and malaria's back in case you missed it. You wake up shivering in the heat, soaked in your own sweat teeth, rattling like dice in a cup. Someone gives you quinine. It's bitter as sin, but it might keep your heart from tap dancing out of rhythm. Here's your mainstream historical fact for today by March 1942. American and Filipino forces on Bataan had endured over 60 days of near-continuous combat, with no significant reinforcements, dwindling supplies, and minimal air support. No frontline unit in U.S. history had ever faced this level of sustained deprivation until now. Let's talk about leadership. General Edward King is now the man in charge on Bataan. Not Wainwright, not MacArthur. King, quiet, methodical, deeply religious. He's not a household name and he doesn't want to be. What he does want is to keep 76,000 starving soldiers from dying in one final pointless blaze of glory. But the pressure's on. The Japanese are regrouping. They're reinforcing artillery positions. You hear the distant boom of naval guns offshore. The sky's clearer now because all your planes are gone. Fringe tidbit: someone in your unit swears he saw a Japanese officer ride into a village on a white horse. Says it looked like something out of a movie. Another guy says it was just a mule with a saddle. No one argues. Who cares? General Hama, the Japanese commander, has had enough. He launches his final offensive on April 3rd. It's Good Friday. Poetic, if you're into that sort of thing. The artillery begins at dawn. A thunderous barrage that lasts for hours. Shells rain down like they're being dumped from the sky by angry gods. Trees explode into splinters. Rocks bounce like pebbles. You huddle in your foxhole hands over your ears, waiting for the world to end. When the infantry charge comes, it's swift and brutal. Entire sections of the Orion Bagak line collapse within hours. Units disintegrate. Some flee into the jungle. Others surrender. You watch a man throw down his rifle and just walk away, muttering to himself like he's grocery shopping. You want to follow him. You almost do. But you don't. You stay. You reload. A Filipino soldier next to you dies quietly, staring up at the canopy with glassy eyes. You close them with your fingers. By April 8th, the entire front is buckling. You're pushed back mile by mile, hill by hill. There's nowhere left to run. And here comes the moment that gets buried in most history books, overshadowed by the drama of MacArthur and the horror of what comes next. But it matters. April 9th, 1942. General King, without approval from MacArthur or Wainwright, decides to surrender. Not out of cowardice, not out of fear, but out of mercy. He knows what continued resistance will mean. Another week, maybe even another day, and thousands more will die. Not from bullets, but from dysentery, starvation, and sheer collapse. Historians still debate whether King had the legal authority to surrender without orders. But you just know this. It probably saved your life. At dawn, white flags go up along the front. Not everyone sees them. Not everyone believes it. Some keep fighting for hours after. One pocket of troops doesn't get the word until April 12th. You're ordered to disarm. You're told to destroy your weapons. You bury your rifle under a pile of leaves. You wrap your dog tags in cloth. You look at the sky and whisper something. A prayer? A curse? Who knows anymore? Then the Japanese arrive. They yell for you to line up. They take your watches, your cigarettes, your boots if they like the look of them. A Japanese officer slaps a soldier for not bowing fast enough. You bow. Everyone bows. You're no longer a soldier. You're a prisoner of war. But the worst part, you're about to find out that surrender wasn't the end. It was the beginning. You're standing in a long, crooked line under a sun that feels like it's trying to boil your skull through your helmet. Except no helmet. That was taken from you 2 hours ago, along with your canteen, your belt, your dignity. The Japanese are shouting, but you don't understand a word. You just follow the man in front of you and pray he knows where he's going. He doesn't. Welcome to the beginning of what will become known as the Bataan Death March. Now, if you're imagining a grim parade of starved soldiers being herded in some kind of orderly retreat stop, this isn't orderly, it's chaos. No maps, no water, no food, and no mercy. You start walking from Mariveles. That's the southern tip of the Baton Peninsula. Your destination's San Fernando, nearly 65 miles north. That's assuming you even get that far. The guards herd you like cattle, sometimes with rifles, sometimes with bamboo sticks. You learn the word Bakairo, they use it like a whip. Move whack. Faster whack. You don't know it yet, but this march is going to kill over 10,000 people. Some say more. Historians still debate the actual number. It depends on who's counting and who's being counted. Americans? Filipino civilians caught in the shuffle. What's not debated, it's going to be bad. Day one and already your tongue is sticking to the roof of your mouth. You haven't had a real drink in 2 days. Somewhere in the middle of the line, a guy makes the mistake of scooping muddy water out of a ditch. A guard sees him. The man doesn't even hear the shot. He just drops like a puppet with cut strings. That's lesson 1, don't break ranks. Lesson 2 comes fast. A man collapses from heat. His buddy tries to help him up. A guard separates them with a bayonet. Then he orders the sick man to stand. When he doesn't, he runs him through. You take very small steps after that. Someone jokes. At least we're getting exercise. No one laughs, but someone snorts, and then coughs, and then just goes quiet. You pass dead bodies quickly. No one dares stop. A hand juts from a bush like it's waving. A pair of feet still in boots sticks out of a ditch. You walk around them. You walk around a lot of things. There's a soldier near you who starts talking to his rifle. Still has it. Don't ask how. He says it's his girlfriend, calls her Becky. You think it's a joke until he offers her a drink from an empty canteen. Eventually, he's gone too. Here's a fringe tidbit: one Filipino prisoner bribes a Japanese guard with a gold tooth. Rips it from his own mouth with a spoon. Gets a sip of water in return. Possibly a legend, but no one doubts he would have done it. By day 2, your feet are bleeding through your socks, if you're lucky enough to still have socks. Blisters the size of pesos pop with every step. You start to lose your sense of time, of place. You swear the jungle is circling you like a predator, and the sun just keeps rising. You reach Balanga. It's supposed to be a checkpoint, but it's more like a bottlenecked nightmare. Hundreds crammed together. You're practically breathing down the neck of the guy ahead. Someone vomits and nobody moves. There's no room. A Japanese truck rolls by. One of the officers throws out a handful of candy. Just to watch what happens. 5 men die for it. 2 don't get back up. Historians still argue whether the cruelty of the guards was directed from above or simply tolerated. Some insist Japanese commanders had no idea how bad it was on the ground. Others say that's laughable, that the torture was the point, a show of force, a lesson in submission. You reach a village. A woman risks her life to pass you a banana. A guard slaps her so hard she drops to the ground. The fruit rolls to your feet. You pick it up. You don't ask questions. You eat it, peel and all. Later, another woman tries to offer rice. She's bayoneted on the spot. You can't stop walking. You can't even look back. Every now and then you see a cart pulled by a carbao, a local water buffalo carrying bodies. The ones who didn't make it. You're grateful for it weirdly. At least those men won't be left to rot. You try to count the miles, but your mind won't cooperate. It's like trying to hold smoke. All you know is that the days are blending together now, stitched together by heat thirst and the slap of bare feet on gravel. You're not just walking anymore. You're stumbling, lurching, falling forward because gravity is doing the work. You pass out standing up more than once. Some guards, just a few, look away when prisoners dart into the underbrush to relieve themselves. Others shoot on sight. It's a lottery. Every decision you make might be your last. You learn to keep your mouth closed, literally. A guy near you collapses face first into a puddle and drowns before anyone notices. Just like that. Water is danger too. By the time you reach San Fernando, your skin's cracked, your lips are bleeding, and your eyes sting every time you blink. You're covered in dust and something darker you try not to think about. But you're not done. Now they cram you into a boxcar. No windows, no air. 80 to a car that should hold 40. You can't sit. You can't move. You can barely breathe. The metal sides heat up like an oven. People faint. Some suffocate. One guy dies standing and no one notices for hours. You think this must be the end. But no. After that, there's still more walking. Final stretch to Camp O'Donnell where you'll finally stop. You think maybe you can rest. Spoiler, you can't. O'Donnell isn't a camp. It's a graveyard with fences. Over the next weeks, more prisoners die than in the entire march. Disease, dehydration, despair. You dig graves by hand, sometimes for people you recognize, sometimes for people you don't. But you keep going, because somehow, somewhere inside, there's one last stubborn spark that won't let go. Because you want to live. Because maybe, just maybe, you believe MacArthur meant it when he said, "I shall return." You're finally at Camp O'Donnell, but if you thought hell ended at the gates, think again. The barbed wire hums quietly in the breeze, just enough to give you a sense of perimeter. Inside, it's dust, disease, and despair. There are no proper barracks, just makeshift huts and tents so flimsy they'd lose a fight to a sneeze. You sleep on bamboo slats if you're lucky, more likely the bare ground. Camp O'Donnell is overcrowded from the start, built to hold maybe 10,000 men, but now choking with over 60,000 prisoners, both American and Filipino. There's almost no food. There's almost no water. But you know what there is in abundance? Dysentery. It spreads like gossip in a high school hallway. One man gets it, then 10, then 100. The latrines, if you can call a trench full of flies a latrine, are overflowing. You gag just walking near them. If you step wrong, you end up in it. Some do, some don't come back out. You're told that if you want water, you have to stand in line at the single working spigot. One spigot for tens of thousands. It breaks often. When it works, the water comes out slow and warm and murky, and someone is always dying while waiting. You want another fun fact? Roughly 500 prisoners were dying every day in Camp O'Donnell at the peak of the crisis. That's your mainstream historical detail. A number so big it stops feeling real. Until the guy you were joking with 2 days ago doesn't show up for roll call. And speaking of roll call, get ready for Tenko. That's the Japanese term for it. Happens twice a day. You stand even if you're sick, even if you can't. Doesn't matter. If someone is missing from your group of 10, you get punished. So prisoners prop up dead bodies just to avoid beatings. Yeah, Weekend at Bernie's style, but without the sunglasses or the jokes. Fringe tidbit. A few prisoners report seeing a man walk around the camp with a small carved Buddha made from an old toothbrush handle. Said it brought him luck. Maybe it did. He survived. Barely. Others swear it was a hallucination. Honestly, at this point, either version makes perfect sense. The guards vary. Some are indifferent. Some are sadistic. There's one they call the Weasel, who gets his kicks by making prisoners run laps in the sun until they drop. Then he laughs. You try not to make eye contact. There's also one who hands out hard candy to Filipinos and then slaps them when they take it. It's not about cruelty, it's about control. They want you broken, they want you small, and you can feel it happening. You lose weight so fast you start to look like a charcoal sketch of yourself. Your ribs poke out like fingers from under your skin. Your cheeks hollow. You notice everyone's belt has a new notch every few days. Eventually, no more notches. Just rope. You start seeing things. Not visions exactly, more like memories playing on a loop. Your mom making breakfast, a baseball game, that girl who smiled at you once on a streetcar in San Francisco. It all blurs, then sharpens, then blurs again. And then there's the black market. Oh yes, even in this nightmare, someone's making a profit. Filipino civilians sneak goods through the wire: tobacco, rice, maybe a tin of sardines. You trade anything for them. Even a single button can be bartered. Some guards look the other way for a cut. Some prisoners turn it into a full-time hustle. Risky, sure, but in a place where death is hourly, risky feels downright manageable. Historians still debate how much Japanese higher-ups knew about the conditions at O'Donnell. Did they condone it, ignore it, actively plan for it? Some say the camp was never meant to be long-term, that it was just a temporary solution that got out of hand. Others say it was punishment by neglect, let them die, and the problem solves itself. You're not sure which is worse. And now something strange happens. You find yourself adjusting. Not thriving, don't get any romantic ideas, but surviving. You learn to find shade at the right time of day. You learn which guards will beat you for looking tired and which ones will just ignore you. You and a few others dig a trench for a drainage ditch. You share a stolen match to light a palm leaf cigarette. It tastes like ash and salvation. Someone starts carving tic-tac-toe into a bamboo pole. It's not fun exactly, but it's not dead either. Then a sliver of hope. By June, the Japanese begin transferring American prisoners from Camp O'Donnell to a new site, Cabanatuan. Why? Because even they realize O'Donnell is a death trap, and they need you alive for labor or leverage. You make the walk to Cabanatuan this time only 20 miles. Easy, right? It's not. You've got nothing left in the tank. The road is still hot. The guards are still tense, and every step is a roll of the dice. But you make it, and you find that Cabanatuan is only slightly less terrible. Fewer deaths per day, slightly more food, a chance if you're lucky to volunteer for an outside work detail. Those are gold. Outside the wire means slightly better rations, less oversight, and a little breeze on your face. You sign up. You're sent to build an airfield. Not for the Allies, of course, for the enemy. You move dirt. You stack stones. You pretend you're not giving the Japanese tools they'll use to bomb your own side. You pretend this isn't betrayal. You pretend a lot of things. And one day a new prisoner joins your group. Tall, gaunt, talks slow. Southern accent. He pulls a small folded scrap from his waistband, a pencil sketch of a landscape. He drew it in O'Donnell, he says, just to remember what pretty used to look like. You realize that's the key. Not strength, not luck, memory. You survive because you can still remember what good feels like, even if just for a minute, even if just in a daydream. You blink and the sketch is gone, but the idea sticks. You're still here. You're still walking. You're at Cabanatuan now, but you've stopped trying to guess whether each place will be better or worse than the last. The difference between less awful and more awful doesn't matter when you're sleeping next to a man who coughs blood into his own shirt and apologizes for the noise. Cabanatuan has space, at least. Not nice space, this isn't a hotel brochure, but the barracks aren't overflowing like at O'Donnell. You're packed in like canned sardines, sure, but at least you're not spilling out the sides. You know what's different here, though. Routine. At Cabanatuan, things settle into a brutal rhythm. You wake up, you line up, you count off, you're beaten for counting wrong, you eat a spoonful of rice, you work some more, you collapse. Repeat. Breakfast is rice. Lunch is watery rice. Dinner is wait for it more rice. Once in a while, there's a sliver of dried fish or a shard of mystery vegetable that tastes suspiciously like despair. And here's your mainstream fact of the night: about 2,500 Americans died at Cabanatuan during the occupation. Most of those deaths happened in the first 6 months. So yeah, that better than O'Donnell claim, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting. You develop a skill for spotting death. You can tell by the color of a man's face, by the angle of his breathing, whether he'll make it through the night. Some of you place bets. Morbid. Maybe. But in this place, gallows humor isn't a luxury, it's armor. There's a prisoner with you named Brown, probably not his real one, who walks around with a tiny pouch he claims contains powdered aspirin. Miracle medicine, he calls it. He charges cigarettes for a pinch. You trade once. Doesn't do a thing. Next week, someone says it's just chalk. You don't care. It made you feel better for one night. That's something, right? Here's a quirky one. Some men create an unofficial library by scribbling remembered book passages on scrap paper. One barracks has all of Moby Dick scrawled in shaky pencil on the backs of discarded Japanese rice sacks. The ink runs when it rains. Rain! Now there's a conversation. Cabanatuan in monsoon season is its own special flavor of misery. The barracks leak. The camp becomes a swamp. Your boots squelch with every step. Mosquitoes swarm so thick you're basically being slow-cooked in itchy misery. You get dengue, malaria, fungal infections, and trench foot, which you only heard about in war movies, but now know smells like decaying mushrooms inside your socks. There's a camp hospital using that term generously. It's a hut, really. A place where the dying are sent to not feel so alone. No medicine, just moaning. You volunteer there one day because someone said you'd get an extra bowl of rice. You don't, but you do get to hold a man's hand while he dies. He says, "Tell my sister, the cat's okay." You don't know what it means. You nod anyway. Historians still argue whether the Japanese guards at Cabanatuan were more humane than at O'Donnell. Some say yes, pointing to the slightly lower death rate and occasional medical treatment. Others argue it's like saying one form of torture is polite. A few guards seem human. One offers you a cigarette once, you say no. He smiles. It's terrifying. Then one day something strange happens. Mail arrives. Not a lot. Maybe 10 letters total for the whole camp. Most are months out of date. One guy gets a Christmas card. It's August. Still, the effect is electric. People gather around hungry for secondhand joy. A line from one letter makes the rounds. The dog misses your lap. Men repeat it like gospel. You even try to write a letter back. It takes days to find a scrap of paper. You write small, carefully. You don't say how bad it is. You say you're doing okay. You say you dream of bread. You slip it into the outbound box and never hear anything again. Another new detail: you're assigned to help with a burial party. The dead are lined up on bamboo stretchers. You carry them out past the wire to a field where crosses made of wood scraps dot the soil like forgotten questions. You dig fast. The faster you dig, the sooner you leave. One day you recognize a body. It's a man who used to whistle Yankee Doodle every morning. You don't know his name. That feels criminal. You hum it once as you lower him in. A tiny, stupid goodbye. You begin to feel like a shadow. Less a person, more a ghost with chores. The camp is full of them. Men walking quietly, going through motions, eyes hollow. You pass each other like ships in a haunted sea. But then something changes. In late 1942, the guards start acting twitchy. They hold more inspections. Count you twice as often. Whispers start something's happening out there. Someone says Allied planes were spotted. Another says the Americans are planning something. Most laugh. The Japanese look unstoppable, but hope is sticky. Even when you want to brush it off, it clings. One day during a work detail outside the wire, you see something unbelievable. A pilot's dog tag. Bent, scorched. Clearly American. Buried shallow near a runway you're helping build. Someone must have died here in a crash. Maybe your side. Maybe someone trying to fight back. It's enough to shake your brain awake. You begin to notice more signs. Guards whispering. Officers walking with maps tucked under their arms. Supply trucks coming and going faster. Something's shifting. You can feel it. And then there's the radio. Some prisoners swear there's a smuggled shortwave hidden in a hollowed-out log. Others claim it's just rumor. But one morning, a man says 5 words that make the entire barracks sit up. They're coming. From the sea. You don't know what it means. But you know you've heard that phrase before. Back in Baton. From a tall man in mirrored sunglasses who said, "I shall return." The phrase, "they're coming," from the sea, sticks in your head like a song you can't forget. You try to push it aside, but it keeps coming back. You're starting to think the universe has a weird sense of humor, or maybe it's just the monotony getting to you. Days stretch like taffy. Every sunrise looks the same cracked sky, the same dusty ground, the same faces hollowed by hunger and fear. You work on the airfield shoveling dirt, sweating through your tattered shirt. The guards watch, but they're distracted. Something's happening out there beyond the fences, and you can feel the tension humming like electricity. Then one morning it happens. You hear the distant roar of engines, low but growing. The sound vibrates through the earth, through the wooden planks under your feet. Everyone stops, some mid-shovel heads snapping up like meerkats hearing a predator. Guards curse and scramble. The air thickens with panic and anticipation. That's your mainstream fact. On January 30th, 1945, the U.S. Army's 6th Ranger Battalion launched a daring raid on Cabanatuan. The mission was to rescue over 500 prisoners, mostly Americans, from a camp that had become a tomb. You're about to witness history. But before we jump to that, here's a quirky tidbit the Rangers trained for their mission by practicing in an abandoned prison in the U.S., complete with mock guards, barbed wire, and surprise drills at midnight. One soldier reportedly got so into character he accidentally knocked out a fellow ranger with a rifle butt. Oops. Back in your barracks, rumors swirl. Some say the Rangers will come with tanks and bombs. Others say it's just a fairy tale of desperate hope. You don't dare believe it, but a flicker of something new, hope, ignites inside you. Historians still debate whether the raid would have succeeded without the help of Filipino guerrillas who scouted enemy positions and guided the Rangers through the jungle. Some credit them as the real heroes. Others focus on the American soldiers' bravery. Either way, it was a team effort. As the sounds of battle grow louder, you hear explosions and gunfire rip through the morning air. Guards shout orders, but confusion reigns. The element of surprise is on your side. You crouch behind a pile of rubble, heart hammering. This is it. The Rangers sweep through the camp like a whirlwind, silent but deadly. You glimpse their black uniforms blending with the shadows, their faces grim but determined. They move fast, securing the perimeter, neutralizing guards with precision. You realize this is the moment you've waited for, the moment someone decided you mattered enough to risk everything. Filipino guerrillas appear, cutting barbed wire and freeing prisoners from their cages. You're stumbling out, blinking in disbelief, seeing sunlight that doesn't feel like a threat. Your legs shake from exhaustion and relief. But there's no time to celebrate. The Japanese are regrouping, counterattacking fiercely. The Rangers and guerrillas hold them off, buying time to evacuate you and the others. You're carried, supported, half running through the jungle away from the nightmare you've lived in. You feel the weight of every lost friend with every step, but you also feel a fragile hope growing. The raid lasted less than an hour. In that hour, over 500 prisoners were rescued. The death toll for the rescuers was light compared to the scale of suffering saved. That single hour changed everything. You clutch a small scrap of the sketch you made at O'Donnell, the one that reminded you what pretty looked like. Now you have a chance to see it again, not in your mind, but with your own eyes. You realize you probably won't survive what's next, but you're here. You made it this far, and maybe that's enough. You're stumbling through the jungle now, surrounded by a swarm of rangers and guerrillas who act more like ghosts than soldiers. Their faces are serious eyes, sharp, every movement calculated. You're a burden and a blessing, barely able to stand but alive. That's the first real victory in months. The forest smells different, wet earth, fresh leaves, and something you almost forgot: freedom. The air feels cool against your fevered skin, and though you're weak, your lungs feel deeper than they have in forever. Here's your mainstream fact. After the raid, many rescued prisoners faced a long journey back to Allied lines, often requiring medical evacuation and rehabilitation that could take months. Your body remembers every moment of the ordeal, but now begins the slow, painful process of healing. And the quirky tidbit: one of the rangers, a guy named Daryl, carried a lucky rabbit's foot with him on the mission. He swore it saved his life at least twice. You don't care about superstitions anymore, but it's nice to see some things don't change. Still, you can't forget the cost. Even as you're carried out of the jungle, you hear stories of friends who didn't make it, those too sick, too weak, or caught in the crossfire. Their faces haunt the night shadows that whisper the price of survival. Historians still debate the true impact of the raid on the broader war effort. Some argue it was a small tactical win in a vast conflict. Others see it as a beacon of hope and a symbol of resistance. Maybe it's both. You're transported to a field hospital where doctors and nurses work frantically. You're poked and prodded, your pulse taken repeatedly. You dream of home, your family, a warm bed, a slice of apple pie. But reality is a long way off. Days blend together. You learn to walk again, to eat solid food without fear, to trust the world outside the barbed wire. The war still rages, but you're no longer a prisoner. You're a survivor. And sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet, you think back to those endless days in the camps, the despair, the small kindnesses that kept you alive, a shared cigarette, a whispered joke, a stolen piece of bread. You realize survival wasn't just about strength. It was about hope, memory, and the human spirit's stubborn refusal to give up. Now, as you lie awake, you understand why stories like this matter. Not because of the numbers or the battles won or lost, but because they remind us that even in the darkest hours, light finds a way. And sometimes that light comes from the most unexpected places: a pencil sketch, a lucky charm, a band of fearless rangers coming from the sea. You close your eyes and breathe deeply, letting the memories fade, gently replaced by the quiet promise of peace. Back in the States, your story is a whisper, at first buried in newspapers, tucked into the back pages alongside other war updates no one reads twice. You're just one among hundreds of thousands, an anonymous face in a sea of survivors. But the word Cabanatuan starts to carry weight. You learn that the raid became a symbol, proof that even when it seems like the darkness will never lift, there's always a plan, always people ready to fight for you. Your mainstream fact here is that the Cabanatuan raid inspired a slew of similar rescue missions throughout the Pacific, changing how POW rescues were conducted. It's studied in military academies today, a textbook case in bravery and strategy. But here's something quirky: the raid's success owes a lot to Filipino farmers who risked their lives to provide intelligence, food, and safe passage. Some even disguise themselves as Japanese soldiers. They remain unsung heroes in most histories, but not in your memory. You begin to hear debates about the toll of the war, whether these rescue missions were worth the cost, whether they justified the risk of losing more lives. It's complicated. Some say lives saved can't be measured by risks taken. Others argue differently. Historians still argue whether these raids changed the war's trajectory or simply delayed the inevitable. In the years after the war, you struggle to find peace. The nightmares don't stop. You hear the whistle of Yankee Doodle echo in your dreams, that haunting tune from the barracks. You find solace in telling your story and trying to make sense of the senseless. You visit memorials, quiet places where names are carved in stone, where flowers are laid. You place a small pebble by one plaque, a simple gesture to honor those who never made it home. And you meet other survivors, each with their own story, their own scars. You realize the war lives on in all of you, not in the headlines, but in the silent moments. Here's a fun fact to lighten things up. One of the rangers involved in the raid later became a Hollywood stuntman, known for his daring leaps and crashes. He said jumping out of planes was easier than living with what he saw at Cabanatuan. You smile at that. It's the kind of absurdity that war breeds. You also find that hope isn't just for the battlefield. It's in the friendships that form after, in the shared memories, the quiet understanding. And as you talk about the past, you listen too. You learn that healing is not linear. It's messy, slow, and often unpredictable. Your story is no longer just about survival. It's about remembering, honoring, and moving forward. You finally understand that the 268 people killed in 1 hour, the lives lost in the raid and camps aren't just statistics. Their voices echoes of courage that refuse to be silenced. Now, you tell their story to anyone who will listen. Years pass and you find yourself back in a quiet room, perhaps with a notebook or a recorder, trying to put words to something that often feels untranslatable, the weight of what happened. You realize telling this story isn't just about history, it's about carrying a truth so raw it hums beneath every word. Here's a mainstream fact to remind you: the survivors of Cabanatuan and similar camps often faced decades of post war trauma, now recognized as PTSD. For many, the battles didn't end with the guns falling silent. The quirky tidbit: some former prisoners formed informal clubs dedicated to keeping the memories alive, hosting annual reunions where they'd swap stories, laugh, and sometimes break down in shared sorrow. One such club had a tradition of swapping best POW jokes, dark humor that could make even the hardest men grin. Historians still argue whether the psychological scars of POW camps were sufficiently addressed by post-war governments. The debate continues, with some calling for greater recognition and support for these veterans. You think back to that one man who whispered about his sister's cat before he died. You wonder if the cat really was okay, or if it was just his last anchor to the world outside. Your story has turned inward now, not just recounting events, but exploring what it means to carry survival. The guilt, the memories, the gratitude, the anger. You've heard it called survivor's guilt, a term so clinical, it almost makes the raw pain easier to bear. You still wake up sometimes feeling like you should have done more, been more. But then you remember the small kindnesses that kept you alive: the shared cigarette, the stolen rice, the whispered joke about crocodile dung, sunscreen that you'd laugh about even if you had no clue what it meant at the time. You begin to understand that those moments were as crucial as any rescue mission, as any tactical victory. They were the invisible threads stitching you back together. Now, decades later, you sit quietly as new generations listen wide-eyed to a story they never lived but somehow carry forward. You tell them about courage, about resilience, about how even 1 hour of hell can't extinguish the human spirit. You tell them how 268 lives were lost in a single hour, but how hundreds more were saved because someone dared to act. And that's the legacy you carry. It's a story about darkness, but also about light. About death, but also about life. About a promise made, a promise kept: I shall return. And he did. You settle into a rhythm of reflection, now understanding that the story you carry is layered beyond the roar of guns and the clatter of boots. There's a quiet, human tapestry woven from countless threads. You think about the soldiers who planned the raid, the guerrillas who guided them, and the prisoners who dared to hope. The mainstream fact: the Cabanatuan raid has become a subject of films, books, and documentaries, shaping public memory of the Pacific War. It's one of the most studied rescue operations in military history. Here's a quirky detail. The real-life Captain Robert Prince, who led the Rangers, was said to have a habit of chewing on straws during tense moments, a nervous tic that earned him the nickname Straw Boss. You imagine him quietly chewing as the plan unfolds, nerves disguised by calm. Historians still argue about the exact numbers: how many Japanese soldiers were killed, how many prisoners were wounded, and even how much the raid influenced Japanese morale. The fog of war blurs the details, but not the impact. You realize the raid was more than a mission. It was a message, a refusal to let suffering go unnoticed or unchallenged. The courage it required wasn't just physical, it was moral. You picture the younger you holding onto that sketch of a pretty woman clinging to beauty amid brutality. The image becomes a metaphor for survival, holding on to hope, however fragile, even when everything else seems lost. You think about the phrase "you probably won't survive this" from that first night story and how it transformed into a quiet defiance. Because you did survive. The lessons linger. The importance of solidarity, the power of small acts of kindness in the face of unimaginable cruelty. And you recognize something profound. History isn't just dates and battles. It's the stories of people who lived through them, who bore witness, and who passed that knowledge on. You look around at the faces of those listening now, young and old, and you see that the legacy of that hour in 1945 is still alive. It's a reminder of what we lose when we forget, and what we gain when we remember. The years continue to unfold like pages in a weathered book, each one carrying echoes from that fateful hour. You sit quietly absorbing the quiet weight of history, realizing how much it shaped not just your life, but countless others. You remember the faces, the 268 who perished in that single hour, the prisoners who survived, the rescuers who risked everything. They all blur into a collective memory that refuses to fade. A mainstream fact to ground you, the Cabanatuan raid is still commemorated annually in the Philippines and the United States, a testament to enduring friendship forged in the crucible of war. A quirky tidbit to lighten the mood. In one reunion, veterans joke that the real enemy was the mosquitoes, relentless little vampires that didn't care which side you were on. Some swore those bites hurt worse than bullets. Historians still debate the ethical questions surrounding wartime rescues. Was it worth risking more lives? Could it have been done differently? These debates ensure the story remains alive, evolving, always questioning. As you reflect, you feel a deep calm settle over you, like the soft hum of a fan on a warm night. The horrors don't vanish, but they become part of a larger story, a story of resilience, hope, and the unyielding human spirit. You realize that your role now is to pass this story forward, not just as history, but as a lesson in courage and compassion. And so you let the memories rest gently like fading stars at dawn. The world moves on, but the story stays, because some things are too important to forget. Now, as the story winds down, you settle deeper into your chair or bed, letting the weight of the past ease into a quiet stillness. The noises of war, the explosions, the gunfire, the desperate shouts fade like distant thunder replaced by the gentle cadence of your own breathing. You picture a soft twilight where the last rays of sun melt into a calm horizon. The world feels slower here, gentler. The faces of those who lived and died rest peacefully, no longer caught in the chaos. You breathe in slowly, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and exhale any tension you've carried along this journey. Remember, you've traveled through pain and courage, despair and hope, darkness and light, all within the span of a single story. Let your mind drift like leaves floating on a quiet stream. You are safe now. The horrors you've witnessed are stories, reminders, lessons, not your burden alone. Hold on to the courage of those who came before. Let their resilience inspire you, their hope uplift you. And as your eyelids grow heavy, know that this story, like all stories worth telling, is part of a larger human tapestry, woven with threads of sorrow and joy, loss and love. So rest easy. Tomorrow holds new light, new chances. Thank you for listening closely. Thank you for remembering.